met quite a few presidents.
What's that?
I said you've met quite a few presidents in your career.
I have. My fourth one.
Oh, Clinton.
Bush came. Bush came
Oh, Bush.
very right after 9/11.
So y'all didn't meet Clinton when he founded the building?
I was not there for the cornerstone. I was in Nashville. Yeah, he wasn't here for the opening. He was here for the cornerstone, which was in 1998.
We're moving this way.
So you're at that red X.
Hi, how are you?
Mr. President, this is Dr. Barney Graham, who's the chief of the group that made the vaccine. And this is Dr. Kazmekia Corbett,
Nice to meet you.
who is very much involved in this process.
Well,
Barney's going to tell you a little bit about what I was alluding to just a moment ago.
please. I'd like to tell you the 20-year history, but I'll just go back 10 years and tell you a little bit about the kind of proteins we study. This is a representation of the virus, and these spike proteins are what help the virus get into a cell. What we've learned over these last 10 years is that not just for this virus, but for other viruses, if you can control this spike protein, and this is the scale of this, about 10 million of these can fit on the head of a pin. And this is about 10 million times larger than the actual protein, but we can see it in this kind of detail. The antibodies recognize the surfaces and shapes of this. So what we've learned is that you have to not only know the structure, but hold it together by creating mutations inside to hold it in the right shape. You hold it in the right shape, it becomes a much better vaccine antigen. And since we knew that for other viruses, since we learned that for MERS coronavirus, we were able to rapidly apply those techniques to this virus and get off to a fast start with Moderna. And Dr. Corbett's going to tell you a little bit about this year that we've gone through.
So while he just gave you the history for the last 10 years, I'm going to give you the history for about the last year, where, as Dr. Graham and Dr. Fauci like to say, all we needed were the sequences, and the reason for that is because we knew exactly what to do based on what Dr. Graham and us have been doing for the last 10 years. So this is a timeline of what we did. We got the sequences around January the 10th last year, so that is the sequence of the virus that was spreading very rapidly in China. When we got those sequences, because we knew how to make that protein as a very good vaccine, we did that really quickly over the weekend, and by the 13th...
Over the weekend.
Over the weekend. You know
bad.
something about working on weekends, right?
No, not like that. Not like that. Just over the weekend we have.
Oh, listen, you'll have plenty of time to do all things over the weekend, the next 4 years. So we decided very quickly with Moderna that we were going to make this vaccine and we were going to use...
When did Moderna get into this? Did you guys
We-
contact
We
Moderna?
worked with Moderna during the Zika outbreak.
Okay.
And so we helped them with some of their animal studies. We were making one kind of vaccine. They were making an mRNA vaccine.
Gotcha.
And we learned that their technology was good. And so we made a deal in 2017 to work on paramyxoviruses with the prototype and with coronaviruses with the prototype, which is that MERS coronavirus.
Yeah,
I mentioned.
okay. I just
We've been
wondered
working with Moderna in a formal collaboration since 2017.
Yes, and the coronavirus team in particular has been working with them in how we call it here in an academic fashion, where we were asking really basic questions about how to make vaccines for coronaviruses, the other coronaviruses like MERS or SARS. And so that's why we were trusting in our collaboration, and it allowed us to move very quickly to make an mRNA vaccine for this coronavirus that was spreading. And so what our team does is, in order to go to the clinic, you have to say, does this vaccine at least do what you think it might do in person in a very small animal like a mouse? And so we got the vaccine here. I think actually I was told that I was one of the first people to open a vial of the vaccine. And we immunized about 200 mice. And then about 2 weeks later, on February the 18th, we got our first results back from a mouse. So what you see
what the
here,
mouse had to say.
the mouse had to say, looks like we got a vaccine. And that's what that yellow says. So those two sides over here are mice that do not have any vaccine at all. You can see that this plate shows that they have no antibodies. Whereas all of these mice have antibodies in their blood. So all you can do is you can put a spot of the antibody or their blood on this plate, and this plate reads how much antibody is there. The brighter the yellow, the better. So imagine how we felt when we saw that bright yellow. And I'll let Dr. Graham tell you a little bit about what we're doing. I actually like to think that I'm responding to a second pandemic with all of the variants. It seems like we're working just about as hard as we were last year. But Dr. Graham is going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing in that regard.
Yeah, so I just want you to know that when we first made that protein on January 31st, it was right here on this bench. And when that ELISA plate was run, it was done right here on this bench. So you're in the place where some of this stuff happens. You've heard a lot about these variants, and we're all concerned
Yes.
about them. And I showed you the spike protein. There's other spike proteins on that screen. And they're just representative of where some of these things have come up in the different countries. And what we mean by variants is this protein is made up of 1,200 amino acids or more. And each time one of those things changes, it can be a new variant. So this virus will accumulate changes, and you see the little red spots on the screen. Those are some of the amino acids that have been changed. So as this thing accumulates changes, you can imagine that some of these surfaces might change, and so antibodies may not see it as well anymore. But I want you to look at the right side, because that is a spike protein, and we're showing you multiple antibodies binding to it in different places. So it can bind on this knob over here. It can bind to this part up here that reaches out and grabs the cell. And it can bind at different angles. And so when we give the vaccine that's like this, it makes antibodies to the entire surface. So one red spot or two red spots or even 9 red spots are not going to lose efficacy, because the antibodies have a lot of places to bind.
Gotcha.
It may eventually lose efficacy, but I think we're okay for now until additional mutations accumulate.
And it's probable additional mutations will accumulate, isn't it? Or is it?
Unless we can keep people from spreading the virus. Every time the
Yeah.
virus enters a new person, it has a new chance to adapt and
Yeah.
select, and we have to get the virus load down.
That's why we say we want to vaccinate as many people as we possibly can, as quickly as we possibly can. That's why your 100 days of getting 100 million is really important, because if you don't allow the virus to replicate, it's not going to mutate.
Well, we're at a position now where I was talking with Jeff. We've been pushing really, really hard with manufacturers to significantly increase in the time frame. Jeff, what do we by June? How much
We'll
do we
have
have?
400 million doses by June, which is enough to vaccinate 200 million Americans. And then you ordered another 200 million doses to be delivered this
That's
summer.
the best way to stop mutations.
No, I realize that one, and one of the things is that, you know, it's amazing how quickly things change in terms of people's perceptions, mine included. I know just a little tiny bit about this because I worked with that guy on cancer issues for a long while because he started this cancer institute. Anyway, but what I didn't realize was just how much of the vaccine we were going to have to actually get produced. And it's one thing to have the vaccine, it's another thing to have vaccinators to put it in people's arms. And it's really turned out to be a gigantic logistical issue for us. And I can say, I don't mean it as a criticism, just an observation. When we've been in office now 3 years, no, 3 weeks.
It just feels like
It
3
seems
years.
like 3 years. But what happened is that we were led to, if you ever hear anybody talking about transitions between presidents, it's really important. Because we didn't have any access to the transition, as you know, Doc, we talked about it. And so we thought, and we were led to believe, there was a lot more vaccine available than there was. And when I said in the first 100 days, I promised that we would get 100 million shots in people's arms. Everybody said, oh, you can't do that, it's amazing. Now I'm getting, why can't you get more? Now we're getting a lot more, as on average. It could be significantly more. But to get to the place where these guys legitimately always ask me is, when will we have enough vaccine to get 300 plus million people? And even though we've increased by close to 600 million promises of the vaccine, we're going to be in a position where it's going to be, it's not going to be by the end of the summer. And so all the Americans who are looking for it, and that's why I keep listening to you talking about when we could theoretically reach enough of the saturation of access that we slow down the spread. And so, but this is it's an amazing. And by the way, every department's jumping in. Defense Department over there, they jumped right in like they did with dealing with Ebola before in Africa. They're probably going to have literally over 10,000 vaccinators who're picking people up all over. People are coming out of retirement, stepping up. Yep. But it all started here.
Hey guys, let's go. How worried are you about the variant?
Well, if we talk about the variants, and I'll let, rather than Joe Biden, the lawyer, explain the variants, I think I understand it. I think it's important that, Doc, you talk about the variants and what we're anticipating and what we think the situation is going to be.
The 117, that's the UK variant, that we feel the modelers are going to tell us it's going to be dominant by the end of March. The vaccines that we have now look pretty good against being able to prevent infection and certain disease. The South African variant is a little bit more problematic. It diminishes the capability of the vaccines to induce the viruses, the antibodies that would suppress it. But it doesn't completely eliminate it. And we know that from studies with other vaccines in South Africa, where it went down to maybe 50% efficacy, but it was very good in preventing severe disease. In fact, there were no hospitalizations or deaths. Bottom line is we take it seriously, we're following it, and if necessary, we're able to make boosts that reflect the variants in question.
Are you upset with the state of the rollout before you got here, Mr. President?
No, I'm not. I think, look, these folks have been absolutely amazing. What I was upset with is not having all the facts. that were available to the last outfit that we did not know. So we were under the distinct impression there was significantly more vaccine available to begin to be distributed, that it was a distribution problem, which it is and was, but that wasn't the main problem. It was having enough, and then getting, you know, there's a big difference, the logistical difference between having a vaccine sent to the States in bulk and refrigerated and having vaccinators with the paraphernalia to put it into a vial and stick it in someone's arm is a very different and logistical problem, difficult problem. So there's the vaccine, there is the access to the vaccine in terms of how you get it where it has to be. That is a giant logistical issue. We're solving that now. For example, we are, as of, was it today, Jeff, we're making sure that all these federal systems, community
health centers.
Community health centers that are federally run, we are getting them, what day? Are we getting
Starting
them?
next week.
Starting next week.
And pharmacies start today.
And the pharmacies start today. We thought, by listening, at least my team did, between the time we were elected and the time somebody recognized we were elected, that we thought that was well underway, that the drugstores were beginning, you know, all the places, the Walmarts of the world were ready. But it turned out they weren't, and so it's been a hell of a learning process. But you have done an enormous, every other scientists I've talked to across the board have said the idea that within less than a year you come up with a vaccine that functions, it's astounding what you did. By the way, your taxes are doing very, very well.
Guys, keep moving.
They don't know where to go.
No one's leading. Left.
over here. Give me real quick. No, it's got to be the other side. Hold on. Does it? No, it's coming out of this. So when you got a second?
Whose audio?
Yeah, I don't have that. I'll just get them all.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, accompanied by Dr. Francis Collins and Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Good afternoon, folks. Had a little discussion with my friends behind me, Dr. Collins and Dr. Fauci, about whether or not I should take my mask off. And the truth is, although we're more than 10 feet away, I think it's important that I not. It's critically important, the message. I realize I'm speaking to a vast majority, at least I hope I am, of the folks out here at NIH. You know that wearing this mask through the next year here can save lives, a significant number of lives. And so I apologize if you don't hear me as clearly as you should. I'd like to start off by thanking Dr. Collins and Dr. Fauci for hosting me today. I spent a lot of time working with Dr. Collins on the Cancer Institute matters, and I said he's the first person I called to ask if he'd stay, but then I was reminded I called Dr. Fauci before I got elected to say, would you stay if I came? So thank you both for staying. Our nation is fortunate to have both of you in these critical roles. And that goes for the world-class doctors, scientists, researchers here at NIH. And I just toured the Vaccine Research Center with Dr. Collins and Dr. Fauci and Dr. Graham and Dr. Colbert. It's incredible. It's a place to go where our top minds spend years researching vaccines and treatments for all kinds of viruses and partnering with academia and industry to prepare for the next one, because there will be others. HIV, influenza, SARS, MERS, West Nile, Zika, Ebola, and today, COVID-19. To all of you, your work made possible the remarkably rapid development of COVID-19 vaccines we have today. It's incredible. Initially, people were talking years, if not decades, before we'd have a vaccine. On behalf of a grateful nation, and I don't say that lightly, on behalf of a grateful nation, I want to thank you and your families for your work and your sacrifice. For there is no doubt your families sacrificed a great deal for the endless hours you put in to save the rest of us. And I know it wasn't easy. The devastation of this pandemic, the loss of life and livelihoods, hasn't spared the scientific community. Labs closed, research delayed, careers disrupted, especially for those in training. Yet with every moment of despair in this past year, you and all the heroes and heroines on the front lines and the frontiers of this pandemic remind us who we are. We are America. We never give up. We never give in. We give back, and we follow the science and find the answers. That's what all of you do here. That's what we've seen all across the country. The scientific community repurposed labs to work on COVID-19, developed therapeutics, new diagnostic technologies, and vaccines in record time. And you're highlighting lessons learned on the importance of pandemic preparedness, public-private partnerships, real-time data sharing, and most of all, speed and efficiency without compromising science and good conscience. Look, you're an incredible group of people. I've been out here many times trying to help you, trying to help my son who passed away with cancer. You're an incredible, incredible group of people. And that's not hyperbole. We know we still have a long way to go. It's no secret that the vaccination program was in much worse shape than my team and I anticipated. We were under the impression and been told that we had a lot more resources than we did when we came into office. We've only been here 3 weeks, but we've learned a great deal in those 3 weeks. While scientists did their job in discovering vaccines in record time, my predecessor, be very blunt about it, did not do his job in getting ready for the massive challenge of vaccinating hundreds of millions of Americans. He didn't order enough vaccines. He didn't mobilize enough people to administer the shots. He didn't set up federal vaccine centers where eligible people could go and get their shots. When I became president 3 weeks ago, America had no plan to vaccinate most of the country. It was a big mess. It's going to take time to fix, to be blunt with you. I promised when I did my inaugural address that I'll always be straight with you, give it to you straight from the shoulder. I will not walk away when we make a mistake. I'll acknowledge it and tell you the truth. We started on day one. We won't have everything fixed for a while, but we're going to fix it. First, the vaccine. I know people want confidence that it's safe. Well, listen to Dr. Fauci. I did. I got my shots. My wife Jill did. Kamala did. And her husband Doug did. So, Dr. Fauci and Dr. Collins got it also. It's safe. And we need more people to get vaccinated to beat this pandemic. That's why in the first 3 weeks that I've been in office, we've increased the supply of weekly vaccine shipments to the states by almost 30%. That means millions more Americans will get vaccinated in February than the previous administration was on track to do. But that's just the start. We bought more vaccines. 2 weeks ago, I directed Jeff Zients, who's here with me, my COVID-19 response coordinator, to work with the Department of Health and Human Services to purchase more vaccines. Just this afternoon, we signed the final contracts for 100 million more Moderna and 100 million more Pfizer vaccines. We're also able to move up the delivery dates with an additional 200 million vaccines to the end of July, faster than we expected. And in further good news, both companies agreed, and we're now contractually obligated to expedite delivery of 100 million doses that were promised by the end of June to deliver them by the end of May. That's a month faster. That means lives will be saved. That means we're now on track to have enough supply for 300 million Americans by the end of July. It may not sound like the urgent progress we need, but let's be clear. When I took office just 3 weeks ago, this country did not have a plan or enough vaccines or people to vaccinate Americans. All Americans, anytime, at any point in 2021. Within 3 weeks, round-the-clock work with so many people standing behind me and in front of me, we've now purchased enough vaccine supply to vaccinate all Americans. And now we're working to get those vaccines into the arms of millions of people. In just 3 weeks, we deployed over 1,000 federal staff to vaccination sites around the country. We're helping give shots and set up and speed up vaccination operations. To date, we've also provided $3 billion to 37 states and territories and tribes to bolster existing vaccination centers and create more of the centers to administer, where we administer the vaccine. For example, 3 days ago, Vice President Harris and we had a virtual tour of a federally supported vaccine center in a parking lot of the Arizona Cardinals Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. It's open 24/7. Folks who are eligible can call by phone or sign up online for an appointment. They literally drive in, stay in their cars, get a shot, get a card, and schedule the next shot. On average, it's about 30 minutes from start to finish. In just 3 weeks, the site has administered 160,000 doses, now averaging 8,000 vaccinations through day and night. Look, it's coordination between state and federal government and the private sector partnership is essential. One of the nurses coordinating the effort in Arizona said the work was like administering, and I love this phrase, Doc, she said, like administering a dose of hope. Like administering a dose of hope. Let me say that, a dose of hope. We're going to get those doses of hope out at new and large-scale vaccination centers that were set up by the federal government. During the Super Bowl, we got a call from the NFL. The commissioner of football, Goodell, said we could have access to all 30 of the NFL stadiums for mass vaccination sites. We just announced we've worked with the governors to set up these new federally run sites in California, New York, Texas, with many more to come. We're going to target communities that have been the hardest hit, and will be staffed by our military, the Federal Emergency Management Association, FEMA, same people who respond to hurricanes and storms and the like, and other federal experts at the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Agriculture to get vaccinators to make sure it gets in people's arms. When I got to office, there was no federal plan, none, to ship vaccines directly to local pharmacies. So folks who are allowed to get a vaccination under the state rules as the allocation of who gets in line are allowed to get one, can schedule an appointment now and get COVID-19 vaccine shots like they would a flu shot from their pharmacy. It will start today, that program. And for folks who can't get to a pharmacy, we're deploying mobile units and sending vaccines to community health centers, federally run community health centers, to take care of the poorest of the poor that reach the hardest hit and the most underserved areas in the country: Black, Latino, Native American, and rural communities. This is an important piece to ensure racial equity remains at the center of our COVID-19 response, which is something I know Dr. Collins and Dr. Fauci are focused on as well. Another point of progress is we're deploying more vaccinators. We're now allowing retired doctors and nurses to come back and administer shots. We're deploying federal vaccinators, and over the last 3 weeks, we put hundreds of new vaccinators in the field and are lining up thousands more. These include medical personnel from our Commissioned Corps at the Department of Health and Human Services, as well as personnel from FEMA, the Defense Department, and more departments to come. All told, we are on track to surpass the goal I set on day one. When I was sworn in, just before I was sworn in, I indicated that my hope was to administer 100 million shots in the first 100 days of our term. I believe we'll not only reach that, but we'll break that. But like I said before, that's just the floor. That's just the floor. Our end goal is beating COVID-19, which brings us to the challenge that remains. We remain in the teeth of this pandemic. January of 2021 was the deadliest month we've had. We lost over 100,000 of our fellow citizens. We're on track to cross 500,000 dead Americans this next month. The new strains emerging create immense challenges, and masking is still the easiest thing to do to save lives. But we need everyone to mask up. And by the way, I know it's a pain in the neck, but it's a patriotic responsibility. We're in the middle of a war with this virus. It's a patriotic responsibility. Not only if you care about your family, you care about your fellow Americans. You realize more people have died in the last 12 months than died in all 4 years in World War II? All 4 years. That's why I asked what the full extent of my authority as President of the United States could be. I signed an executive order that required masking on all federal property, on modes of travel like planes, trains, and buses to cross interstate commerce. And I've been calling on governors, Republican and Democrat, mayors, Republican and Democrat, and local officials to institute mask mandates within their jurisdictions. We need everyone to do their part for themselves, for their loved ones, and yes, for their country. Mask up, America. Mask up. And to really get ahead of this pandemic instead of chasing it, we need Congress to pass my American Rescue Plan. I'm grateful that the Senate and the House are moving quickly, and my hope is that we'll get Republicans as well as Democrats to support us. But we can't wait. People are dying every minute from this pandemic, and we're suffering profound economic crisis. that the pandemic is created. Every major economist in the country, left, right, and center, says we can't go big enough here. That if we want to get our economy back in shape, we've got to move quickly. How many of you out there don't have enough food to eat? How many of you out there are worrying whether you can pay next month's rent or pay your mortgage? How many of you out there have a child at home because the school's not open? You have to make the difficult choice of staying home with your child or going to work if you have a job. This is not who we are. The United States of America, we take care of our own. And job number one of the American Rescue Plan is fighting the pandemic. It puts $160 billion into our national COVID strategy, which includes more money for testing and tracing, manufacturing and distribution, and setting up vaccination sites, everything that's needed to get vaccines into people's arms. The American Rescue Plan also includes $4 billion to build new manufacturing plants, so we are ready to manufacture vaccines we don't have to wait. You know, there's simply nothing more important than getting the resources we need to vaccinate people in this country as quickly as possible. As quickly as possible. We're not going to get our economy back in shape and millions of people back to work until we beat this virus. As I said, everyone from Moody's on Wall Street to the whole range of other think tanks indicates that if we do this plan, we'll get to full employment within 2 years. We'll be in a situation where we actually grow the economy, creating millions of jobs immediately, and put us in a position where we are going to have the GDP grow at a higher rate than if we don't do this. We're in a national emergency. I want to close with this. We're in a national emergency. And this will be one of the most difficult operational challenges we have ever undertaken as a nation. It's going to take time. We're going to face setbacks along the way. And I promise you when we do, I'll just own up to it and say what they are. But we have to stay vigilant. We have to stay focused. And for God's sakes, we have to remember who we are. We are the United States of America. We can do this. We have the resources. We just have to choose to use them. We have to do what all of you do here at NIH and across the scientific community. Keep the faith with purpose, vision, and with every dose of hope we have. Folks, remember, like I said, this is America. We have never, never, never failed. We've decided to stand together and act together. That's who we are. That's not chauvinism, that's just a fact. We've never failed, we stood together. And there's ever a time we need to stand together, it's now. May God bless you all. And may God bless everyone here at NIH, all the doctors, scientists, and researchers fighting this pandemic and saving lives. And may God protect our troops. Thank you very, very much. You're the best America has to offer here at NIH. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.